When the pandemic had struck in the year of 2020, I was strongly driven in finding myself different ways to maintain a positive mental well-being. As I had accomplished this, I realized how much of a tremendous impact this had made towards my mental health. To start this off, I would like to ask all of you a question, and you may respond by either raising your hand or by putting it down. Okay, are you all ready for my question? Okay, cool. Here it goes. Okay. Have you ever felt scared? Okay, cool. Thank you. You may all put your hands down. Yes, I thought that question was too easy. That's why I have a second one prepared. But this time, I would like to suggest all of you to think about your answers a little bit more. Try to dig a bit deep and then respond. Are you all ready for the second question? Okay, here it goes. Have you ever felt so scared that you just couldn't control yourself? Okay, thank you. You may all put your hands down. This one definitely took a turn. I have to be honest, it actually feels good to know that we're all not as alone as we think. However, the one question that still lingers in my brain is, why? Why do we feel scared? Why do we ever have to face anxiety in our life? And most importantly, why should we even care if we ever come to experience it? Believe it or not, anxiety attacks, depressive disorders, or anything related to stress-related disorders can get pretty severe. But thankfully, advancements in healthcare had led to an increase of many treatments today which can help alleviate these symptoms of the disorders. But wait, does the word treatment stop us from thinking that these are not as dangerous as we think? Well, think about it. What does anxiety truly do to you? How do you know when you're experiencing it? What does it even look like? And if we ever come to face a severe anxiety attack in our life, what should we do and how can we stop ourselves from being so afraid of it? I want to introduce you all to a friend of mine, the panic monster. Isn't he adorable? I'll just have you know there is a lot of mischief hidden behind that adorable face and cutesy devil ears. The panic monster has been trapped inside of me for a very long time, and it waits ever so patiently to capture the most perfect moment in my life where I had felt truly scared and terrified to the bone. Such a moment would be me giving this speech right now. Thankfully, over the years, the monster had become so weak at seeing how much brightness and happiness had existed in my life. The monster thinks to itself, wow, this girl has a great family. She has great friends. She goes to a great school with people who appreciate her and love her for who she is. What is something that I can do to bring sheer distress to this girl's life? I do not know if you can all relate to this, but have you ever had this feeling of justification that nothing in your life could ever go wrong? As long as you continue to work hard, maintain a good personality, and receive the approval from others, what could possibly bump in the way and ruin everything in the course of your life? I don't know what it is. It's at the tip of my tongue. I don't know, maybe the breakout of a deadly worldwide virus. Yeah, I bet that sounds pretty familiar. From the summer of 2020, our school had shifted to online learning, which lasted till the start of the next school year. Now, this was a common transition of learning for schools all over the world. Online classes had essentially meant prolonged exposure to our screens and isolation from our social groups. Aside from that, we have also been keeping ourselves updated regarding the news of the virus that kept on changing into something worse and worse every single day. For instance, almost every 1 or 2 weeks, I would be hearing terrible news regarding the virus that is affecting my hometown, the places that I had lived nearby, or even just globally in general. Now, listening to all of this had made me and my family feel really worried. However, one thing that really intrigued me was how quickly the idea of the virus being around became so normalized. And this was due to one primary reason. People had to move on with their responsibilities in life. Everyone had a job. Everyone had to accomplish things in order to reach their goals. Everyone just had to pass the fear and move on with what they did. Even my parents, even me at school. But I had this weird, unexplainable need to talk to someone, but I was not sure whom to speak to. So I decided that if everyone can handle the fear of the virus and proceed with everything in their lives, so can I. Days and weeks of my vacation, quarantine had passed by, and all I had ever done to keep myself entertained was my computer, my phone, and my books. As you can see, the common connection between all the activities I did not involve any social interaction or physical productivity. As I did this, I was mentally trying to block thoughts of the virus when I tried doing something fun. Now here's where things get a bit crazy. I remember this time where I was enjoying a bowl of salad and staring at the news on my phone at the same time. After being thoroughly invested into the content that I was looking at, I slowly began to feel sick to the stomach. I was not conscious of the way I was processing all of the information in my brain. I kept on overthinking and making myself feel sick. And slowly I began to feel as if I was losing my breath. And that is when I realized that I gave myself a panic attack. I will never ever forget how overwhelming that entire day had felt for me. Thankfully, my family had come to the rescue by comforting me with lots of love, support, and tons of warm hugs. I also communicated with my sister as I told her about my mini breakdown, and she gave me the same wholesome response, but virtually, as you can see. One thing my parents had taught me after I had my breakdown was this. I had learned that whenever we face a stressful time in our lives, it is completely normal to face any form of anxiety. And that's when I began to think to myself, well, that's a bit embarrassing. If anxiety is such a common thing to experience, then why am I so afraid of it? So regardless, I decided to ease my fear by ignoring that I had ever experienced a panic attack in my life and just moving on with what I did. Now, summer is over and it's time to be back at school, face to face. Since many students were coming back from their vacation, there was a serious potential that our school could face a positive case of the virus. Now, this became a growing concern among students and teachers in school. With cases and school workload on the rise, my mind was now flooded with all sorts of worries. I did not want to talk to anyone because I was afraid people would bring up the topic of the virus. So I chose to keep quiet all over again. That was until the second most traumatic thing had happened to me, in the middle of a class. Now this time, I was pushing negative thoughts away from my brain to be more focused into my class content. I kept on overthinking about all my problems together, and I did not realize how much it was making me feel stressed. I kept on thinking these ridiculous thoughts. What if I just stopped breathing? What if I just passed out right here in this spot? Is my blood pressure okay? Are my lungs deflating? And then boom, just like that, I had a panic attack right that instant. I remember being in tears and being kindly escorted out of the classroom by my advisor. As I was taken outside of the classroom, my advisor instructed me to sit with him on the bench and have a conversation. Despite whatever had happened inside the classroom, my teacher asked me some questions that I had never thought I would go so in-depth into. So these were the things he talked to me about. How are your classes going? Have you seen the recent movie they released in the theaters? I heard that you're a fan of The Lord of the Rings, but have you read The Wheel of Time? I slowly began to answer all of his questions with enthusiasm and lots of excitement. My perspective had slowly shifted towards a place of comfort, peace, and wonder. I realized that I enjoyed talking about all of these things that filled me with joy. Slowly, I began to feel much better as I talked about these things. And then gradually, I was brave enough to share the truth based on why I had my breakdown. As my teacher had listened to the truth, he told me that everything I talked about was a massive combination of different things, and he reminded me that if I had ever needed to communicate with anyone, I must reach out and never have these thoughts flood my brain. From then on, I began to have these weekly sessions with my school counselor. She gave me the advice that I had very much needed to hear. I have learned that if we really want to get out of a stressful situation, a mentally stressful situation, we should never ever bottle our emotions. Instead, we should try to communicate. Communication helps our brain to reorganize information so it makes more sense to analyze them. It helps us to understand the way we think when we put our feelings into words. We are more conscious about the way we're processing information. Anxiety really itself is actually an uncontrollable response. You can never be certain when or why it may occur. And you can have anxiety in the most happiest day of your life. And uncertainty, to me, is one of my biggest fears, and having that combined with anxiety is truly a nightmare. We can never be certain when or why it may occur. When we experience a tough time in our lives, our brain just loves to capture all sorts of bad energy. And in order to have that from turning into something dangerous, we must reach out to others for help. In the US alone, 46% of teenagers and adults have shown symptoms of anxiety in December 2020. And this was also during the period when the pandemic was at its peak. Every teenager and every adult had a different perspective of the pandemic. But one thing that has kept connections solid were through social relationships. The pandemic has taught us about the value and the effectiveness of making friendships. Personally, the pandemic has taught me to become stronger in understanding and in embracing change, even if it meant for me to do something that involved stepping out of my comfort zone. Right now, UNICEF is promoting an amazing project that will help teens to raise their voices in spreading mental health awareness. Unfortunately, even today, the aspect of having any mental health disorder is severely overlooked. But also, with us being teenagers, it is a common tendency for us to push ourselves as much as we can. But then it's also very easy for us to fall captive into our own thoughts. Aside from the pandemic, everyone in the world is going through something overwhelming. So it is very important to look out for one another and simply make sure that we're all doing okay. I have one last question to ask all of you. Do you think that having anxiety makes you look weak? Okay. It's good to see a variety of answers, but this is my personal opinion. I think that being emotionally responsive to stress or anxiety is not a weakness. Instead, I like to look at it as a kind of an opportunity to really understand people around us better. We can help others to grasp lessons from us because we would know what it's like to react to a stressful situation. After my counseling sessions and my increased communication with teachers and students, this is what I began to look like more. The panic monster inside me had slowly lost control of my brain as I became even more inspired in sharing my story with everyone and spreading the importance of mental health. But still, even to this day, the monster is persistent in coming back and filling my head with darkness. And that's when I thought to myself, you know what? This is normal. Everyone faces anxiety, and there are many, many possible ways to recover from it and eventually get rid of it. For me, the top advice I will always hold on to is communication. Journaling thoughts, meditation, listening to music, or even sometimes scrolling through social media can have their own therapeutic remedies. But to me, communication is almost just the same as taking a breath of fresh air. Again, the more we unscrew thoughts, the more sense they make. The last tip I highly recommend to everyone is to have compassion. Managing a good mental well-being may seem like an effortless task for people who are mentally strong. But when we put ourselves into accomplishing great things, we must also have a good grip of our emotions. For example, if we are preparing to give a successful speech in front of the school community, we cannot keep on doubting ourselves. Instead, we should have a little faith in the message that we're trying to share with everyone. With a good mental well-being, we can communicate with others better and easily find solutions to problems. I think that if we continue to live in a world by reaching out towards others with more compassion, we can make phenomenal differences and grow to be more open-minded human beings. Having anxiety or being emotionally vulnerable can make us stronger in understanding others and ourselves. We should never hate ourselves for being emotional because it is a part of our nature that is here to stay and is here to make us stronger. There is a panic monster inside of everyone, but we can all defeat it by forming friendships, embracing change, and being compassionate. Psychologists, counselors, and doctors are among the most greatest heroes that we can ever have. But what is our role? What can we do to mitigate the severe outcomes of anxiety in people? We should try our best to reach out to others who need to communicate with us. We must have compassion for them. We must make sure that people are comfortable around us and make them feel safe. But most importantly, we must have compassion to ourselves. Thank you.